Hey guys, it's Matt Shu from Upright Health and welcome back to Coronavirus Lockdown 2020. We are here in the Bay Area talking about your inner thigh muscles in your groin. So we want to help you think right, move right, and feel right. Today we're going to be doing all of those. We're going to be talking about your inner thighs, how you can choose exercises for your inner thighs based on a couple emails that we got from some of our fans and clients. So we actually got an email from Kevin, who's a client of Mitch's, who's been working on his inner thigh muscles, and we're gonna look at what his 5-year-old daughter came up with to train his inner thigh muscles. And we're gonna be looking at an email from Cindy, and Cindy emailed to say that she was having trouble with her obturator internus in training that muscle and trying to get her groin to feel better. So for her, she's just looking for ideas like, how do I really train this muscle? So we're gonna look at the principles of how to create inner thigh muscle exercises for yourself in a way that's going to keep you safe and will gradually build you up to do harder and harder inner thigh exercises so that the discomfort, pain, and pinching goes away. I'm wearing the mask today because I don't want to get you sick. And if you want to follow the lead of a lot of Asian countries and even Eastern European countries and even some Western European countries now that have actually adopted the mask, then I would strongly suggest it. If you've got a mask sitting around, it'd be great to put on. If not to protect you, at least to protect others in case you are asymptomatically spreading the virus around, or especially if you are symptomatic and coughing and you absolutely have to go outside. Just put a freaking mask on, please, if you can get a hold of one. And if you can't, it does seem like it is beneficial to just use a homemade mask, stick layers of stuff across your face, figure out a way to get your droplets trapped inside so you aren't spreading the disease. I happen to have a couple masks that were left over from when the fires in California were choking us to death. So we were very lucky to have this lying around. All right, let's talk about your inner thighs. So let's first start with the exercise that Mitch had assigned to Kevin. So that was the Copenhagen exercise. The Copenhagen exercise, you can use, pillow, bench, whatever. It's often easier to use a bench because then you can slide your bottom leg underneath the bench. But in general, what you're doing is you're trying to use the inner thigh muscles on the top leg to hold your body up. So you can think of it as a plank. Or sometimes we call it an adductor plank. You can also do it for repetitions. So you're just going up and down slowly and with control, trying to get the inner thigh muscles fired up. You could lift this higher. I just don't have the props with me right now. You can also straighten out the leg and go into that position. This can be really tough on the inner thighs. So you may need to first start with one modification with the knee bent, or be closer, use your hands more, and then just work on gradually building up strength in the adductors. If you just throw yourself into the hardest version, or you throw this up higher and try to lift yourself up, you will probably pop your groin. So I would strongly suggest you start real slow and careful with that one. So Kevin was working on these, and his 5-year-old daughter was watching him do this and work on the adductors, and Kevin said she came up with a really good idea, which was use slippery socks on a wood surface, which this is not, and then you let your feet slide out. You just need to hold on to something and then slide back in, which doesn't really work that well on carpet, but if you're on a hardwood floor, it would work really well. And it is an exercise that I've seen in all kinds of different training regimens for inner thighs, particularly for people like ice hockey goalies. It's probably really helpful. I thought it was really cool. Kevin thought it was really cool that Kevin's daughter came up with this, just thinking about like, how can I work these inner thigh muscles? And what Kevin pointed out is that it definitely does work the inner thigh muscles, but not quite the same. It works the muscles at a lengthened position rather than at a shortened position. So this is a key idea with any time you are trying to choose an exercise for your body. You are looking at where the maximum resistance, maximum effort is being required of your body, and whether that's at a lengthened position for the muscle or at a shortened position for the muscle. So this is something that I think a lot of physical therapy templated routines they seem to miss this point, and a lot of just strength training often misses this point, which is that just because you train a muscle in one position or one orientation, these other routines tend to assume that you are then training it fully and appropriately for maximum function, and that's just not true. So, for example, if we look at the Copenhagen exercise, if we're doing this, if I come up right now, the most resistance and the most work is happening when the adductors are in their shortest position. Okay? At this position, they're doing some work, but it's not as much. If you try this, you'll feel it. You can feel that the most contraction of the muscles in the inner thigh are happening right now at this top position when the adductors are most short. If you do this sliding exercise that Kevin's daughter was working with, you can feel that the most work is happening when the adductors are at the longest position. And as you come up, as you're coming up and in and the adductors are into their shorter positions and into the shortest positions, there's literally no resistance anymore. So while both of these exercises do work the inner thighs, they are changing the point at which the adductors are getting worked the most. So the question you want to ask yourself then is, what length, what orientation for my muscle am I trying to work the most? Where am I the weakest? Now, it's totally possible that you're weak in a shortened position with the adductors, so then something like this would be really good. And it's also totally possible that at the lengthened position, you're really, really weak, and you need to then work it at the lengthened position. It's not going to give you the same effect to do just one exercise. So you could potentially, if you just did this one where you're splayed out into the splits and are pulling back in, you could potentially get really strong at the lengthened position, but in this shortened position, you may never develop any strength. You have not trained your brain to talk to the adductors in that position. So even though you might have really strong adductors out here, in here, nothing's happening, and you still have groin discomfort because those muscles are still too weak. Now you might be thinking, well, okay, that exercise on the floor doing the Copenhagen is too hard. Oh my God, it's too hard. Well, then let's think about how we could adjust that and use some of these ideas, right? So we want to work the adductors in a shortened position. Well, in a shortened position, we need to be like this, right? So how can we add resistance to these muscles, make them work, but in a way that isn't your whole body weight, right? When you're doing the Copenhagen, you're lifting your whole body up. So how can you make that more manageable? Well, you could use an elastic band. You could have it attached to some sort of solid, stable anchor. You could just be standing or hang on to something to help you balance. And the resistance band is pulling you out this way, right? So then you would just start pulling in this way. And like that, you have created a similar situation where the maximum resistance is at the shortened position, but based on the strength of the band, you can adjust how difficult it is. So you can start out really light, you can try different positions, you can even go different orientations, right? You can throw the band around higher up on the leg, so it reduces the length of the lever that you're working against. You could also try it with a bent knee, so it's like the bent knee version of the Copenhagen. The point here isn't that this is a magical adductor exercise. The point is that this is the thought process that you can go through when you discover something weak for yourself, right? If I want to do the Copenhagen exercise and I feel like, holy cow, that's going to pop my groin muscles, then I want to come up with something that's easier but very similar, that has the same characteristics of working the muscle at that shortened position, right? And the same could happen if I'm trying to work on improving that splits position and doing the slippery floor with my socks doesn't work for me, it's just too hard. Well, then what I can do is think about maybe just using the band so that I'm getting a lot of resistance at that lengthened position, and then just try to pull it in, pull it in, pull it in, right? And just get used to pulling. And if I need to increase that resistance, I can just step out farther, but if I do that, I'll go completely out of focus. So I don't want to do that. All right, so hopefully that gives you an idea of how you can think about choosing exercises for your inner thighs. You want to be careful, especially in the groin, because it's really easy to pull groin muscles. Speaking as somebody who has pulled his groin multiple times playing hockey as a goalie and skating out, it did hurt a lot to pull groin muscles, so I strongly suggest you take your time, gradually build up the strength in your inner thigh muscles to handle the activities that you're looking to do. Use bands, be creative, think about what position you're working the adductors in, so that you can build resilience in many different angles and many different positions. If you found this helpful, click the like button, share it with somebody you know whose groin really needs some work. If you're looking to help yourself, train yourself, go to uprighthealth.com/DIY. We've got all kinds of courses, offerings, etc. to help you while you are on coronavirus lockdown. If you can, if you have a mask, put on a mask, protect others. So if you are asymptomatic and are potentially spreading the disease, you're at least keeping the disease to yourself. And subscribe to the channel. And as always, I hope you remember that pain sucks. Life shouldn't.